programs this year. I don't know what the fourth program is going to be. You guys have to suggest it. But they've been really successful. And tonight we have something called Roosevelt Island Politics. And to say the least, Roosevelt Island is a very political place. For any of you who've lived here long enough, you know all about it. And we're going to discuss some of our history, some of our political history. And we're going to first introduce our guests, Margie Smith and Lydia Tang. Yay. And Margie and Lydia have both lived here many, many years. I don't know how many years you've lived here, Lydia.
Going on 31.
And Margie?
Oh, since 77, so.
Oh, like me. Okay, we're the fossils.
I came as a child.
So what we're going to do first is Lydia and Margie are going to tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we are going to proceed with some questions and comments. So Margie?
Starting? Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. It's a nice crowd. Okay, a little bit about myself. I came to Roosevelt Island in 1977, and I came from a little town out in Queens, where we didn't own the property. We rented it, but directly from the city, so it was not unusual to know about ground leases and things. And when I got here, I started to hear from some people, and they were telling me about lease payments and pilot. And I said, well, what's a pilot? And they said, it's a payment in lieu of taxes. I said, but that's what my ground rent is, a payment in lieu of taxes, because I don't own the property. And they said, well, no, not exactly. You kind of have to pay both. I said, that sounds like we're double dipping. So I decided I'm going to get involved in the political scene to find out why we're double dipping and if we're double dipping. I still believe we are, by the way. And they say it's not because you don't pay exactly the full amount of taxes, so you pay less, but you're paying taxes on land you don't own, and you're paying ground rent because you're leasing the land. So that makes sense to me. Anyway, so I decided to get involved, and I joined the board of my building, Rivercross, and I was on that for a couple of years, and then I got connected with a group called Maple Tree Group. I can't believe it. The Maple Tree Group was a group that didn't like the fact that we could not elect the RIOC board, because that's the board that acts as our city council, pretty much. They make the land use decisions, they decide on our budget. So I got involved in that, and we did okay with that. We never got to get our elected representation, but we did get a majority of the RIOC board members to have to be residents. So we're kind of proud that we were able to do that. And then after that, I decided I really got to get closer to the action, and I ended up on the RIOC board. So I left the Rivercross board, got on the RIOC board, stayed 8 years for my 4-year term. I said, this is insane. Every 4 years, you're supposed to get somebody new. It's not the Supreme Court, you know, get new people. And so I quit. At the same time, a few other people quit, and we got a whole new board. Things were very different back then. I won't get into that. Let me let Lydia go next and introduce herself, and then we'll go on there.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lydia Tang, and I've been living here for almost 31 years. We moved in 2 months before my oldest daughter was born, so I was very large, and we moved into Island House. I started getting involved in the community when my kids started school, kindergarten at 217. So then I got involved in PTA, I got involved in some moms groups, and I've been pretty steadily involved in nonprofits on the island, mostly because I went to engineering school. I know how to add two numbers. I became the treasurer of most of the boards that I became involved with. So that included the PTA, that included the Island House Tenants Association before it privatized, included Main Street Theater, Dance Alliance, and included the Living Library, Life Frames. And then, I guess it was around 10 years ago, they were trying to get people to run on this referendum, to run for a nomination to the RIOC board. So I ran, and now I'm on the RIOC board. There was a lot of bumps along the way. I won that referendum vote and heard nothing, and then finally, somebody said, "Do you still want to be on the RIOC board?" And I said, "Sure." And so it took the process took a while. So I need to do this because I am on the RIOC board. I have to tell you, covering all my obligations, I have to tell you I'm not speaking to you as a voice from RIOC. I am speaking to you as a public citizen, as myself. So I'm not speaking for the board of RIOC, I'm not speaking for the corporation, I'm just speaking to you as myself, Rosemont Anderson.
Thank you. I don't know, I just got here 48 years ago and something happened. And I got involved in many things, but I've been, as a member of the RIRA board for many years, which was very frustrating. There was so much infighting that nothing got accomplished. And the Historical Society has always been much easier. And we sort of are unanimous in what we want to do. So, and the politics of the island are really amazing. I mean, when I look back at over 40 years of who has run the island, how it's been run. When I came here, there were 3 people running, 3 or 4 people running the island. There was no RIOC. There was the Roosevelt Island Development Corporation, and then there was something called SAHE, Safe and Affordable Housing for Everyone. And they ran the island. There were a few people. In fact, for a while they had a little office in Blackwell House, then they had a little office in where public safety is, then they moved to Westview, and now they're located in the parking garage in 680 and in the new building. So RIOC, when it was formed, I think around 1990, got larger and larger and larger. The first president was Rosina Abramson, and she stayed a few years, and then after that we've had a succession of presidents. And many of them have been interesting. We've had some that left or were sent away. We've had some that were really, really great. We had some that a lot of people came and they were just frustrated by dealing with the island and dealing with the state, because you're dealing with the state of New York, not the city of New York. And there was always an expression, we're dealing with the second floor. The second floor is the executive offices of the state capitol, the governor's office. And for many years, it's the mandates that came down from the second floor. And we're just something like a little thorn in their side, because Roosevelt Island's a very small population compared to New York State. So it's always been an interesting example of sort of democracy in action. So my first question is, how are unique structures, how are they affecting our community? Margie?
I just have to go back to one thing you say. RIOC was formed under the RIOC Act in 1984. And this is a tad ironic. It was on April 1st, which is the April Fool's Day, they formed RIOC. Let's see, how does the structure affect us?
Right.
Well, I mean, we have to go back again to the people making decisions are not people that we elected like everybody else in the city. There was a time when the Southtown development was being made, and we actually filed an Article 78, which is anytime you sue a government agency, it's called an Article 78. We wanted a different design. We wanted the fronts of the building to face Main Street so that we would be kind of a whole U as opposed to the backs, which made us 2 communities. And we were told we don't have any standing because we, the residents, are incidental recipients of a deal between the city and the state. That affects us a lot. When we can't elect the people that make your decisions, and you're told you're a recipient of the deals that they make. It's very different from the rest of the city.
How do the structures affect the community? I think it affects it. The fact that we have the wire buildings, right? So the wire buildings are Westview, Island House, River Cross, and Eastwood, which is now Roosevelt Landings, right?
Right.
And they were the first buildings, and they were all Mitchell-Rama buildings. And they're basically the buildings that most of the people moved into to start with, so we got that core of
Does
community.
everybody know what a Mitchell, I mean, maybe everybody hasn't been here forever, doesn't know what
Yeah.
a Mitchell Island building is.
Who needs an explanation of Mitchell Island? Okay, all right. You know better, I'm gonna
Okay.
let you answer.
They were representatives, it was, I'm gonna say McNeil, Mitchell, and Alfred Lama. Anyway, they were two government officials that put together a program for affordable housing. So Mitchell Lama was the name of the bill that said, anybody who moves into this building, these are the income limits, you can't make more than this or less than that. And there were family compositions. You can't be one person and move into a 3-bedroom apartment. So all the buildings had to abide by the Mitchell Lama regulations.
So the original 4 buildings were Mitchell Lama buildings were, so most of the people who moved in at the beginning moved in to those, in fact, all of them moved into those 4 buildings. And then the new development came, and when the new developments came, they were all, market housing, market rate housing, pretty much, right?
No,
No?
no, there was, the new, you're talking.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Well, Manhattan
Manhattan Park
Park has-
and Octagon, and then Southtown had their own agreement, because there's hospital
It was
housing.
an 80-20.
There was an 80-20 thing.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
so does
40
everybody
River
understand
Road
that?
Yeah,
was
40
low
River Road.
income.
Okay, okay, I am not really great at this, so. So, but that's what happened, so in terms of, how it affects the community, I think that it affects the community that most long-term people who are here have much, greater, they feel a greater stake, and they feel a greater, sense of, ownership for the community. That's my sense of it. I might be mistaken, but most of the people who are, in the core buildings felt a greater ownership and felt a greater, push to become involved in the community. So when I moved into Island House, it took me a long time to break into that community, because I only came 30 years ago. People have been here for 50 years. So it took me a while to kind of break into that, community activism, and it took me, I guess, 5 years to kind of break in and actually, feel like I could participate. So, so that's why I think that's my perspective on it.
Well, my perspective is I moved into 580 Main Street, which was Eastwood, and for my total rent for $321 a month in 1977, I had a lovely apartment with a backyard. And the minute I got here, I became involved. First of all, I was single. First, everyone had just moved here, so we were all new together. And we, over the years, a few years later, we get these notices that our rent, we have to certify our rent every single year, fill out these papers. Then after 2 or 3 years, they start increasing the rent. And they don't increase the rent by 10%. They send you a notice, you're gonna get a 20% rent increase. And then you hire lawyers, your residents association hires lawyers, you fight the state, you go to court, you do all of this stuff, and then they usually decrease the rent increase down to like 3%. And this happened numerous times, and it's infuriating and it's exhausting. And there's one lawyer in the city, his name is Jack Lester, and he's still fighting for all these community groups. I heard his name recently. And this was the problem with the state regulating. We were not New York City rent control, we were not rent stabilization, we were the Division of Housing and Community Renewal, which is over Roosevelt Island, was not an agency that was formed to run a community. They were formed to develop communities. They should have stepped aside and left the community with different kind of management. The other problem is that when they first built the island, they had no companies to manage the buildings, so they said, oh, the developers will manage the buildings. The developers knew nothing about managing buildings. So for many years, the rent problem happened. Then first building to go private was River Cross, and it was already a co-op, so that in 2014, the residents there voted to privatize.
We weren't the first building to go private.
No,
Island House
Okay.
was private
No.
before that.
no.
River Cross.
No,
Okay.
Judy, the landings came first.
Well, they went out of.
Mitchell-Lama.
Out of Mitchell-Lama.
They went out of Mitchell-Lama, so they were rented, so the people who lived there were protected. New people move in, and it's fair market rent. Rivercross, which was already a co-op, they went private in 2014, so their nice Mitchell-Lama affordable apartments are now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars more.
But there's a big flip tax when.
Oh, yes, the Rivercross flip tax of only 46%. Then Island House went private, and they have a different kind of a deal, and Westview has a different kind of deal. So in simple words, the core group of the people who came here, that really settled here, and you stuck with us, we're the ones that remember all of these things, and we're very skeptical because of our history of, and what happened, and then all the new developments, the new buildings here, Riverwalk, one building was a lottery building, and that's 460 Main Street, which was the 8th out of 9 buildings built. And that was a lottery, that was one of these 421A lottery, so that's about 300 apartments. Then Octagon has 100 units, which have sort of a reduced rent. Manhattan Park built 4 luxury buildings and 1 building, which was Section 8, lower income, and that's 24 River Road. And I'm going to tell you something very sad. When they built 24 River Road, they didn't want to associate it with Manhattan Park, so they tried to name it 660 something Main Street. It's like, those people don't belong to us. And we had an uproar, so they changed the number. But they really segregated, which you weren't supposed to do, people of lower income and lower income buildings. So we've gone through all of these contortions on Roosevelt Island. Okay, Margie, you know this one. How would the state appointees administer the island?
Well, it depends who you're talking about.
Right.
We've had some very good RIOC presidents, we've had some very bad RIOC presidents. When I was on the board, and I can only speak for the 8 years I was there, the governor's office would reach down and fire anybody they wanted to fire, whether they were doing a good job or not. And the board had nothing to say about it because of one word that Lydia was able to get changed in the bylaws. When they talk about hiring and firing, it says that the RIOC board may hire and fire the employees at RIOC. If it had said shall instead of may, that would mean only the RIOC board can do it. But may means they may, and other people may, and the governor may, and whoever feels like it can do it. So some of them did very good jobs. Some people that I wish had never gotten fired got fired. And some people that I think shouldn't have been there stayed for a very long time. So I don't want to name names. Anyway, so good, the bad, and the ugly. What can I say? But I think we're in for a treat with B.J. Jones. I don't know him, but I know he's at Battery Park City. I've talked to some people down at the Downtown Alliance who've worked with him, who say he's terrific. So hopefully we're on the upturn for administering the island.
I second that. I am hoping that we are on an upturn as well. As she mentioned, B.J. Jones is the first CEO to be hired by the board. And so we worked very hard on that and changing the bylaws, and thank you very much, Margie, for helping us on the committee. I was the chair of the governance committee that was instrumental in changing the bylaws from that may to shall. And so I've since stepped down from the governance committee. So now we have hopefully 2 excellent lawyers that will take over and continue the work of updating all the documents. Hopefully. And so actually, as we speak, there's a governance committee meeting taking place where I am not, so that's a good thing. So, the question was, I forget the question. How do they administer? Okay, so, right now, most of the resident board members are appointed by the governor. There are 2 of us that are appointed by the mayor. So I'm one of the people appointed by the mayor, and Howard is actually here, and he's appointed by the mayor.
Raise your hand, Howard.
Hi, Mayor. Are you appointed by the mayor or governor?
Mayor.
by the mayor. So he and I are appointed by the mayor. Recommended?
Right,
Okay.
appointed by the government.
Recommended by the mayor to be appointed by the governor to be approved by the state
Senate Finance Committee.
Senate Finance Committee. So there are a lot of hoops to jump through. It took a long time to jump through those hoops. I'm sorry?
Which, isn't Liz Kruger the head of this finance?
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
So that's good.
That's good.
That's great. So, so the people on the board that were appointed, some were appointed longer than the more recent. So recently, in June, there were 2 people appointed. And then I was appointed with 2 other people the June before. And then, and now the previous resident board members were appointed long before that. I'm thinking Conway, I'm not sure exactly when he was appointed, but whatever. So yes, so most of the people right now, 4 of the people on the board were appointed in the last, say, 2.5 years. How are they impacting let me read, administering of the island? I was under the impression, and I'm not sure how accurate that was, that many of the appointees, they have very different perspectives about how they want to lead the island. A lot of them want to lead the island more like having the answers given to them as opposed to going out and looking for the answers or being instrumental in finding the answers. So they want to hear answers from the staff, and they kind of want to rubber stamp them. I would say that the more recent board appointees don't want to be like that. They really want to make sure, there's so many skills of the people that live on the island that can contribute toward the administration of the island. And we're only oversight. We are only oversight. We were not supposed to get involved in the daily workings of the island. And that's great, but oversight, one of my frustrations was that in dealing with some of the back and forth, sometimes it seemed to me that the staff didn't necessarily have the same expertise as I did. And so I would try and push for it, but they didn't necessarily understand what I was saying. And I really had to push pretty hard in multiple venues. And so there are so many people on the island that have so many different skill sets. And I think that the more skill sets that we get from people on the island who have that expertise, the better we'll be able to run the island. Because we are an island of multi-talented people, and one of the things I was pushing for was, I went to engineering school. I didn't major in engineering, but I have a long lineage of engineers in my family. My father was on the team that built New York Airport. My grandfather was on the team that built the Chrysler Building. So I have a long lineage of engineering in my background, in my family. And so I just met a structural engineer who lives in this building. And one of the things that I found that they didn't understand the difference between a professional engineer and an engineer that was working. A professional engineer is a licensed engineer that's licensed by the government to be an expert in engineering. So that was one of the things that I realized early on, that the staff didn't understand what that was. And I tried really hard to push for that in terms of getting the appropriate oversight for the island. Okay, I'm just talk too much.
Okay, well, it's true, we have a lot of people who've come and gone here, and they just they're not qualified to do the work they're doing. They were appointed, or there was like the lowest bidder or something, and that happens a lot with contracts. that they just go for the lowest bidder who's supposedly qualified, and it's a bad idea, because we've had a lot of work you've seen done on this island that's shoddy, that a private company would never accept. I said, I want the people who are running Rockefeller Center to run Roosevelt Island. I want qualified people, not people who slip through the cracks, and it is a frustration here. Okay, one of our best allies here are politicians. Thank God for most of our politicians. My question to you is, what politicians have you worked well with over the years, and how have they improved things for our community?
We've got a pretty good bunch now, actually,
Yes.
but Pete Granis is my old-time favorite. Pete was, you know the term honest politician? That was Pete Granis. We sent him a donation for his campaign one time of like $25 from RIHS, and he sent it back, and he said, I really can't do this because, you know, I don't take money from organizations. But Liz Kruger is our state senator. Liz is pretty good. Rebecca Seawright, they're all good. This is going to sound mean, and I don't mean it that way, but they're all good at writing letters, because they can't really do very much of anything. The governor's office runs the place. They can write a letter and say, here's what we're hearing from our constituents, here's what we'd like you to do. The state level, our assembly member and our senator have more influence, because they can kind of wheel and deal up in Albany. If you want me to pass your bill, I'll pass my bill, that kind of thing. The city, nothing. They can't do anything. In the city, you know, the city council people for the whole rest of the city, they decide where the money is going to go, what kind of land use there's going to be. All they can do to RIOC is say, we really strongly suggest that you don't put this here, or you do put that there, or you don't do any more expansion. But I think right now, Jose Serrano was good when he was here, our other state senator. We're a very small voting block. How many voters on this side? Maybe
About 4,800.
about 4,800. That is this.
Active voters.
It's
Active
like
voters.
we don't have that kind of pull. So we have to kind of rely on getting good relationships with the politicians, be out there handing their flyers out on the Upper East Side to get them elected and that kind of thing. But as far as direct contributions by our politicians, there is not really a whole lot. And I know you're running this show, but I thought maybe you might want the audience to ask some questions. They may have questions about the new master lease.
Well, let's
notice.
finish my question.
Oh, well, then
Okay, so when I first joined the board, we reached out to a couple of the politicians, and it was because at the time that we joined the board, the prior administration was very reticent in allowing us to get access to what we were supposed to have oversight over. And so we were trying really.
Which was the prior administration?
The two people that we fired, we were actually,
Right, okay.
yes. So they were very reticent in giving us access to even understand what we were supposed to have oversight over. So we reached out, we were trying to find out on our own, and we reached out to all the politicians. Some of the politicians were very helpful. I would say Liz Kruger and Rebecca Seawright were very helpful in, you know, meeting with us and giving us advice and trying to help us just fulfill our responsibilities, because that's our responsibility as board members. We're supposed to be oversight, and we don't know what we're having oversight over. We can't do a good job at it. So anyways, that was good. I was kind of disappointed in the few politicians that we reached out to that ghosted us, but was very grateful to the ones that did help.
One thing the politicians do is give us money. The city council, which is Julie Menon now, they give funding to island organizations. Unfortunately, the city funding system is so slow and so paltry. In many ways, it's almost not worth it for a lot of organizations to apply for funds, because the system is such an entanglement that by the time you get your few $1,000s, you've completely worn out your bookkeeper and your staff. But they do give us some money. The state legislature also has given money. We also qualify for when they give the $1 million for community groups. We've gotten some of that money. Those are from our local legislators, and that's mostly city. But in general, the politicians are very good in coming for some events and some things. They love to show their face. And a lot of them do. I mean, Rebecca Seawright and Liz Kruger and Mark Levine when he was borough president, they were excellent. And especially not just to our community, but to Kohler Hospital. To Kohler and the Health and Hospitals Corporation, the politicians are really good, and that's very, very important because they bring very large amounts of funding to the city hospital system. And this is going to lead to our next phase of history. How does this community formulate its activism? And we're going to have a lot of activism needed within the next few years. Right, Margie?
Okay. How does it formulate our activism?
Well,
I don't even know how to answer that. It used to be the Residents Association.
Right.
People would get to, what typically happens, you get annoyed at something. Somebody sees something, I can't get on the tram. All of a sudden you've got a dozen people who say, hey, we need some kind of a group that's gonna do something, and you get a WhatsApp thing and everybody sends, I was on the line for 3 hours, and they send it to Rick, and Rick publishes something, and so then the politicians get to know. But typically the activism happens when something bad happens. They were gonna get rid of the tram one time. Everybody went nuts. They were not happy with public safety. People started kind of marching in the streets. But the core used to start with the Residents Association, which is pretty much defunct now. But that was a subcommittee of the Residents Association. Yeah.
Okay, I have to read the question again. How's the community formulated? Most of it's, I mean, it started all out with grassroots. It's always started out with grassroots. So people, I guess the sad thing about it is what you were talking about, the Residents Association, that it's pretty much, you said defunct. I know that it's whatever it is now is I would say illegitimate. That would be my word for it. But I don't know per se. I'm actually a neighbor of Frank Ferrance. He lives a couple of doors down from me. And when I said to him, when were the elections? Because I used to be on the Residents Association. I used to run the elections on the Residents Association, right? So I used to, anyways. And so he said, oh yeah, there were elections. And I had never seen a single poster. I had never seen, I didn't even get to vote. I would have loved to vote, but I didn't even know who was running for my building. Anyway, so that's for me is very sad. I know that.
Why did that happen?
Why did that happen? As far as I can tell, the history of it is when the pandemic happened, and in 2019, I was on the Residents Association, and that's when we had mass exodus of the Residents Association. Laura was there too as well. What had happened was that because of the pandemic, they decided that 1 year not to have elections, and because they didn't have elections, they instituted, we're just gonna have this one big Zoom that whoever shows up that wants to be a representative or a council member can be a council member by, yeah, just by being there, because they're willing to show up on this Zoom. And so they weren't voted in by the residents of their buildings, which is typically how that runs. The buildings had a certain number of representatives that they could elect into the common council. And so what happened that year was, then they voted in by, whoever was there, whoever showed up voted in a president, vice president, all those groups, and then they seated chair people of the subcommittees. And I had been the chair of a subcommittee, a couple of subcommittees, but apparently the new administration didn't want me there, and I don't want to be anywhere where I wasn't wanted, so I ended up a couple of months later stepping down, because it was obvious to me that they really didn't want me to do what I had. Yes, Howard?
Okay, so RIRA has an interesting and sad history, but the Residents Association is really necessary on the island. I see a room full of people who are interested.
Can I give you the mic? So you
Sure.
can actually,
Wait, you can't go very far.
oh, so you may have to come up here. Oops, sorry.
Just strangle us, it's okay. Talk it up. Thank you.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Howard Pallaby, I'm also on the board. The Residents Association was very active until about 2020. Like any organization, there's politics and infighting. And as soon as anything breaks the concentration and the continuity, it begins to fall apart. It's not too surprising. I see a room full of people who have some interest and some energy. I see a means of communication through Rick over here, if he'll volunteer, to allow there to be a point of contact. I think there's an opportunity here and a necessity here to get people to reorganize themselves, because as you'll hear with the new considerations under the lease with the city and the state, an active residents association is necessary. The last time this was very useful was when Cornell campus came in, and a community coalition was created, and to some degree of success, negotiated a good relationship with Cornell. So we have a pretty good relationship with Cornell as a consequence of the action of a couple dozen people, I would say, in the community, meeting, agreeing, and advocating for all their neighbors. So, it's not my role to do this, but I'm suggesting that maybe not today, but soon, a critical mass has to reinvigorate the bones of RIRA. Thank you.
Thank you. That's true, because you're going to be hearing about the lease extension. There's one other thing I want to mention before the lease extension is Community Board 8 Manhattan. We're part of Manhattan Community Board 8, which is 59th Street to 96th Street east of Central Park plus Roosevelt Island. So Community Board 8 is where community issues come up. I mean, there was a big Community Board 8 online Zoom meeting. Their Street Life Committee last week about the proposal of having a cannabis dispensary next door here. And now over 100 people from Roosevelt Island were on that Zoom meeting. And the thing is, if you want this legislation to pass or to fail within the community board, which is still only advisory, you must tune in this Wednesday to the community board public meeting by 6:45 p.m. It's cbm8.com, and just go to the calendar for Wednesday. And if you want to still voice your opinion, because there was 100 people wanting to voice their opinion the other day, you go on before 6:45 p.m. and sign up to speak at the public session of this meeting, because that's the only way at their monthly meeting that you can speak as an outsider. There was a vote taken, and if the vote is going to be carried but you have to be there again to remind them of what, if you're pro or con, and go online at cb8m.com, look for the schedule for Wednesday the 19th, click general meeting, what does it say? It's the monthly meeting, and go online, and there's a place to sign up to speak at the public session. Because if you don't do this, other people can change things you don't know, but you want to be active with this. This is for every item that comes up on their agenda. They do this for landmark buildings that want to be landmarked. They do this for a lot of things, for parks, especially parks and public spaces. And that's one good thing that the community board does. And we do have an active representative of a few members who are on the community board, Roosevelt Island Committee. And if you want to join the committee, the application is online, because this is a way to get involved also with Manhattan people, because you also see what problems they have, and you sort of learn more about your city when you're just not doing only Roosevelt Island, because we do have this island mentality here. Okay, so we have had a lease extension. Our lease with the City of New York was scheduled to end December 31st, 2068. It is now going to end December 31st, 2078?
Yes.
If approved.
If approved. Now, this is
If approved by whom?
a long plan that analyzes what's on the island, what should be on the island, what conditions exist on the island, what conditions will exist, if you could put more people on the island, if you could put less people on the island, if you need more transportation, if you don't need more transportation, if you need more services. This is an analysis that's going to take place, and it's the New York City Department of Environment, DEC? EDC, Economic Development Corporation. And Rick, do you want to explain a little bit more of it then?
Well, as of,
Don't be embarrassed to talk in public, Rick.
could you record this, please? So as of now, there's a tentative agreement. As of now, there's a tentative proposed agreement between the city and the state to extend the Roosevelt Island master lease for 10 years. And as included within that agreement is a plan to explore potential development opportunities on Roosevelt Island for housing, which includes the site at the Kohler campus site, as well as the steam plant. So those are really the two big issues that have been raised by this lease extension. The reason the lease extension is only for 10 years is because they're basically kicking the can down the road. The 10-year extension is to enable residential mortgages and for commercial property financing to be able to be secured by banks, because right now there's less than 50 years remaining in the ground lease, so the property owners and some commercial and some residential mortgages may have had difficulty in securing financing. So by extending it another 10 years, they've kicked that issue down the road. So there still has to be eventually what's going to happen after that 10-year period of time. But right now, the agreement is just for this 10-year period of time. It has to be approved by RIOC, and it has to then be signed by both the mayor and the governor's office. And it has to be signed before the end of the year when there's a new New York City administration coming through. That's my understanding. Howard and Lydia may have more information, being RIOC board directors.
The two most important things are Kohler, and Kohler. Because Kohler, at the north end of the island, has an enormous campus. And trust me, the city of New York would love to do something else. They'd have to, Kohler itself, the hospital, 500-bed long-term care and nursing facility and rehab hospital. The thing is that the campus the building opened in 1952. So it's rather antiquated, but you don't want to give up Kohler. You don't want to give up a long-term rehab hospital. We only have 5 in the whole city of New York, and Kohler is full. It has occupancy of 500 residents now, and it's full of that. It could have 800 if there was something like another pandemic where they put acute care patients in for the short term. But it's a safety net facility for the city hospital system. It's also in a lowland. The area around the hospital has to be built up because it's very close to the water. It can flood. The Lighthouse Park can flood. So that has to be done. And for a while they were talking about building a 10-foot wall around the hospital. And we feel that that wouldn't be very good, to say the least. So that question has been kicked down the street for the last 2 years. And probably because in the back of someone's mind is, we're gonna get rid of Kohler or make it smaller and build housing at the north end, or build something at the north end. And that is one of the questions. And also, you know, I look at everything and saying transportation, transportation. The other place that they're talking about is removing is the steam plant. It's a steam plant that used to provide steam heat to Gold and cooking, steam for cooking to the Goldwater Hospital, which is gone, and all the old facilities that were on the island and up to Kohler. Kohler no longer uses the steam plant because it was deactivated when the other hospital closed. The steam plant is sitting on top of a subway line. It is polluted because it's an old lead and oil pollution site. It is next to the Queensboro Bridge. It's next, the two stacks are over the tram station. So the city, I don't know if they found someone who's willing to take on the demolition of this building. But unfortunately, some people think, oh, we'll get rid of the steam plant, we can build another apartment house there. So, and also, not included in this probably is Cornell Tech wanting to build more buildings on their land. But that's already city land and that doesn't come under this. But Cornell Tech would probably soon want to build another building or two on their hill, which is their property, and it doesn't come under this. So there are a lot of questions to ask about it because I don't trust anybody anymore. I've seen too many programs where you go and they tell you all these nice things and then take a Post-it note and see what you want. No, our community has to be active. Our community has to be involved and say, and go to the meetings. Kohler's having a meeting this week. We're gonna have meetings with EDC people for the next foreseeable future. Go and voice your opinion and go and make sure everyone goes, because you're protecting your own island. You know, if they want to put more housing or whatever, what are the ramifications? We all see what it was like this weekend. We had a fire that killed a person in 560. The woman passed away. It completely blocked Main Street. There was no way to get on and off Main Street. The subway to Manhattan was not running at the same time. The tram was packed. You know, you think of this. This is an emergency. How much more can this island take with the infrastructure we have? So this is what you have to think of when these projects come to being and these people start talking about the new wonderful things they're building. You know, they still think that this is Disneyland sometimes. Margie, your comments.
Whatever. There's another part to the lease that I want to find out about because I don't know how it turned out. But there's the master lease between the city and the state. But then each building has a lease with RIOC that was due to expire. I know River Crosses was going to expire like 2025, something like somewhere around there. And when we came out and privatized, the part of the deal was to extend it to 2068. I want to make sure that the building extensions also go to 2068, and asking the two RIOC board members to please make sure that happens. 78, I'm sorry, I said 68. Till the end, the same as the regular master lease. Judy's talking about getting involved, and she's absolutely right. You go to the CBA meetings and all. More important, I think, please go to the RIOC board meetings. Rick publishes when they're going to happen, and I remember a time when the church, if there was a specific issue, the church would be packed with people who wanted the RIOC board members to know how they felt about things. You can go there now and hear an echo. I mean, nobody goes anymore. And why should the board members have to decide what they want to do for the community when the community is not telling them what they want? It's very, very frustrating because you get to speak, but you don't get an answer. The deal is you tell them how you feel. I know how bad that is on the line. I've been on both sides of that. But if you don't go and tell them, how are they going to know what you want? So please, please, please get involved.
Let's have a few minutes for questions.
Questions?
I guess I have a question.
Can you come up and stand,
I
Verna?
think you can hear me. I'm responding to what you said, Margie, that we should attend these meetings to tell them how we feel. Why don't they have a system to seek the community input?
They should. And there was a time when they used to. We used to have pre-board meetings, and they were called conversations with the board. And we talked to them, and there were a bunch of people in the beginning, and then there were fewer and fewer and fewer, and nobody came. So they're operating like all the city and state government boards operate. You go and you talk, and you don't get an answer. Even the CBA, the public session, you'll get to go up to the mic and talk, but you won't get an answer. So people get frustrated and they stop coming, but push them to do that. Push them to go back to these open meetings where you actually get an answer.
My favorite meetings are the operations meetings and the transportation meetings, when you find out when they're having them with RIOC, because you can talk. And there was supposed to be some very important discussions at the last transportation meeting, and the meeting was postponed. And because operations, usually the engineering people and the staff come, and it's really a back and forth. And even if I'm not on the committee, I'm not shy to say what I think. And that's it. You get there and you listen and you go, what? You know, and you really have to confront them, because a lot of times the staff is just sitting there giving you a spiel, and you realize that, no, this has to be discussed with the community. So you find operations meetings or transportation committee meetings, they're really good for that. Another question?
We didn't find out about these meetings.
It's on the RIOC website, except that usually it's buried, and sometimes it'll be in Rick's blog. It's really hard because we
Advisories. The
advisories.
Yeah, get involved.
Yeah.
Say what Rick's wanting. Rick, what's your?
Roosevelt Islander blogs.
Just RooseveltIslander.com.
Right. Any other questions?
Can you repeat that and say it slowly?
RooseveltIslander.com.
You have a question, right?
Yeah, if no one else does.
I'll have to discuss it
I
with
have a
this.
question also.
Yeah. Barbara?
I'm wondering if we know what Hudson Related's position is in all of this.
I wouldn't have any idea, and I'm not saying a word tonight. But you can go to the opening of the park Wednesday at 2:30. You can see those swings on Main Street.
Well,
Yes.
Hudson Related was quoted in their press release, being very positive about it.
Of course.
Yes.
Yes, of course. Let's be honest, yeah.
Okay, what's up?
I just had a general question in
Sure.
that, not wanting to get off too much of the specifics
Yeah.
about the plan to open the weed dispensary. If not for Rick's blog, I would not have a clue that this was proposed. So my question is, was RIOC consulted at all? Or decisions like that completely up to Hudson Related, and thank heaven that somebody let us know about it? I mean, I'm surprised, like, 10 days before they have the community board 8 meeting, I'm actually very happy with my neighbors that 100 people plus showed up. But how come, why didn't we find out more about this? Why weren't we asked anything?
It was posted on the door, don't laugh, of the store, the former doctor's office. Plus it was posted on a lamppost at ground level. I'm not kidding you. It was not posted anywhere it was not posted at the subway station, it was not posted at the tram station, it was not posted at the supermarket. It was posted legally, I don't know what their rule is, but it's terrible because it was on the door of the proposed site. And that is something the community board and the people, a lot of times you see these for liquor license, it's the same thing as liquor licenses. You'll see one notice somewhere. You had a question in the back?
Yeah, can one of you explain the relationship between Hudson and RIOC and the state and the city? Because I don't understand how those decisions are made. I don't understand what authority they have to make decisions like that.
Well, Hudson and Monadnock Construction were selected as the developers for all the buildings from 405 Main Street up to 475 Main Street. They were chosen, the first building opened around 2000, And they built 9 buildings over the year, and they were the developer.
But what
But they-
relationship do they have in terms of finding tenants for the buildings that are here on Main Street? I just don't understand how that works.
Right. Years ago, RIOC used to go out and find retail establishments for the island, and they really weren't very good at it. They had, when I got on the board, there were tenants that were like a year and a half behind on their rent, and they don't know real estate. So they said, well, you know, there's some buildings going up with, down here, down the other end, maybe we ought to put out an RFP and see if we can get a master leaseholder for all the storefronts. So every building, every storefront that faces Main Street, they put out an RFP for, and Hudson Related won the bid. And they had a stake in it because they didn't want people driving through a town with all blacked out windows, so they figured that they'd be good at it. But they were given a contract, and presumably the RIOC board is overseeing what they're doing with the stores, because there were some guidelines, some pretty specific guidelines. I don't know that it ever addressed a cannabis store, because they did have one before, and unfortunately they weren't legal at the time, so they were able to evict them. But that should have been kind of a warning signal that you better tighten up on these guys for what they're putting in there. But they tried very hard, I have to say, on their behalf, to get another medical facility here. They contacted all the hospitals, they did the urgent care. They really want to get a medical establishment, and they can't. My own opinion, and it's up to you guys what you want to do, I would say to David Kramer at Hudson Related, you want to give it back, because they may not want to do it anymore. They're pretty much built. And maybe you guys could take it back and get some more input from the community. I'd like to see another thrift shop back.
Well, Hudson Related is there forever. Don't we need new RFPs for other developers to come over?
I don't know what the length
of
of
it-
I would assume you guys may know.
So I don't know what the contract.
I don't know when it expires, but it wasn't.
I think it was a-
for-
it was a-
year.
It was a 20-year lease. I think it was a 20-year
minute, we
lease.
have,
20?
we have one more minute.
Can I
Danielle
I know
wants to
Howard might
close.
know, but I don't know.
Can I ask a question?
Okay, one
Ju-
minute.
Just what was the role of the board, if any, in the lease extension, and what do you think the role will be going forward?
In the lease extension,
That was just announced, the master lease extension.
we were read in.
You never read it?
We were read in.
Oh. You were what?
Read in.
I don't know what you mean, you were read in.
We were informed about it shortly before it happened.
So you're just informed about it, no active
Just one
role?
more thing I gotta say. There's another group on the island that kind of knew about the lease extension, and they formed a group called TRIBA, the Roosevelt Island Business Alliance. And while it says business, it is some of the business from the island. It's most of the island residential buildings that belong to it. And their very first step, the first thing they wanted to do was make sure that ground lease was extended, because everybody had an interest in that. So there were representatives from a couple of the buildings. David Kramer was on the committee, Skip Hartman from the Tennis Bubble, Brian Weisberg from Octagon, Rick O'Connor, Alex Arzak from Rivercross. So there were multiple people involved in the community in just at least giving us some breathing room. We did not want December to come and a new administration, because we have been through that so many times. Every time they identified somebody from the city, a deputy mayor or whatever, Adams would do something, they'd resign. So we had to go get somebody else. Same thing from the state. So you keep turning over the people and you're back at square one. So we thought if before the end of the year, if we can at least get a 10-year extension, we'll get some breathing room. In the meantime, hopefully they'll do the planning like they were supposed to.
I'm sorry, Danielle is high-signing me that she wants to close the library for some reason. I thank Margie, thank
you, everybody.
Lydia. And, okay, one thing, if you didn't sign this sign-in